Here we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another amazing episode of the Over Sharon Show. We're back again to talk about the Tao Te Ching or the Tao Te Zing or whatever. And you know what? We're just going to give out a shout out to a good friend of ours, Spoons, who sent us a little message and was saying, I was listening to your episode and you guys weren't sure how to pronounce it, but doesn't it say right in the first one, the Tao that could be named is not the eternal name, so kudos to you, Spoons. And as I was listening to that voice message, I even before you said it, I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like it's right in that first verse. It's already telling you can't.
Yeah, right.
And here we were going like, was it Tao? Is it Tao? Is it, how do you spell it? Yeah.
That's probably why there's the confusion. I should have got that. That's hilarious. And shout out to Joe. What's going on, Joe? Man, I'll just tell you, I know I haven't gotten back to you on that last message, Joe, about some music you wanted me to listen to, but me and Elizabeth absolutely love it. And we just been busy, but I will listen to it again. But yeah, that guy, let me just tell you, Joe is super creative. Like I want to be in a band with that guy.
Says you're looking very Rob Zombie.
Yeah. And then QSB said Rob Zombie wants to be like Brandon when he grows up. Exactly. That's why he's from Connecticut, because he wants to be like me. Rob Zombie's from Connecticut. He's the lead singer of White Zombie.
Is he younger than you? He probably is, huh?
I don't think so, because
okay.
I used to go to his shows when I was in high school. So,
okay. Never mind.
I mean, they were already famous then. So
okay.
But a man can dream, right? All right. So we're gonna share today's quote before we get too far deeply into
we didn't talk about what deck we're gonna pull from, but
all right. Well, you want me to say the quote first?
Yeah.
What deck do you have over there? Do you have a Crowley deck?
Yes.
Yeah, we could use that. All right. And our quote today is from Alan Watts. You are a function of what the whole universe is doing in the same way that a wave is a function of what the whole ocean is doing. Alan Watts. And if you've never listened to some of his lectures on YouTube, I would say check it out. They're pretty interesting. Now, again, not that I agree with everything he says, but, some people try to put him in the new age category. But I think if you listen to what he says, there's a lot of truth there. And it's up to you if you want to be caught in that new age trap or not. Right? Right, Sharon?
Right. I don't know. I think I don't when people start pointing fingers and going, that's new age, I'm just like, okay. And
it's like, well, you know what it is? It's like a gun. Be like, that gun is dangerous. The gun is dangerous. But like, yeah, it is dangerous. Exactly. So you probably shouldn't handle it. And it could be used. Guns could be used to rob people and to keep people, as slaves or whatever. But they can also be used to hunt for your food or protect your house.
Mm-hmm.
So yep. I think it's the same kind of thing. I'm surprised we never came up with that analogy when we were talking about the new age and all that stuff. Which, if you haven't seen those episodes, go back and check out all the Oversharing episodes. We talk about all that stuff, especially if you are weary of the new age movement. So are we. So yeah.
Even though people might think that we are kind of new agey, it's just because we borrow from. I mean, I would say they co-opted terminology that was already out there. They co-opted all of that and gave it a name and made it a quote religion. And just like because we use some of the terminology doesn't mean we're in that religion,
Just like the Romans and Constantine co-opted the cult of Christos or whatever it was, where it was this idea to just live your best life. And they're like, no, but you got to be our slaves now. So in the same way.
Ace of Wands.
Ooh.
Fire.
That's a lot of fire.
Beginnings.
Yeah. Like it.
And we are starting to do this whole series on the Tao. So
and yeah, exactly. And I also like aces because if you think of poker, aces can be a low or a high card. So the late ace is like the lowest card in the deck and the highest card in the deck, which is amazing because it's like the alpha and the omega. So it's the same thing. So I feel like when you attain mastery in an area after the 10, you can always go back to the ace. It's the 1, right? It's embodied in the 10. You see the 1 there in the 10. There's just the 0, and the 0 can be like the Fool card. Like you gain that perspective of the Fool, and now you're ready to go on and maybe further your craft or whatever it is you're working on with fire. So yeah, I like that. Amazing. Great card.
Yeah. Cool stuff. Cool card.
Yeah. I'm gonna take
Well,
a kombucha.
oh, nice. What brand is it? Brandon.
It's the,
Oh, I figured it was that one, the Health Aid. I like that flavor. It's a
yeah,
nice
it's
one.
pretty good. It's not as good as making your own like Spoons does sometimes, but you know, when it's on sale, it works in a pinch.
Cody's being silly in the chat. Oh, Lord.
Oh, Lord, I didn't see it.
When I came down, he's making fun of this. I don't know if you know that where that skit that's from. It's something he sent on Instagram before.
I think so. Explain it though, because it's
some dude is trying to do that climbing up the crates challenge. And then I don't know if he's a homeless dude or whatever, but he's like kind of like wobbly. He ends up falling off, and then he's like moaning about it on the floor, and he's like, when I came down.
I thought it was going to be like a reference to Moses or something, like when I came down with the law or something.
When I came down the mountain.
Yeah, exactly. When I came down. That's funny. When I go to town and I come down with the town.
He's on a work call. He can't listen, but
all right.
Well, he don't know we're talking about it.
At least he can grace us with his jokes.
Yes.
Awesome.
He told me to say a joke. I'm like, I don't do just
knock knock. Who's there? No.
I'll tell you a vegetable joke, but it'll be pretty corny. Tee-hee.
Isn't that a grain joke?
Oh God, I heard that one on The Chosen. I was watching The Chosen last night, and one of the guys told the other disciple, he's like, why don't you try telling jokes sometimes? And he's like, he says that. He said the corny joke, and the guy just looked at him like, okay, because he's like a little autistic, so he didn't get it. He's like
waiting for the joke still.
We'll work on it.
Well, what's the joke then? That is the joke.
Prometheus Peanut says, Brandon and Sharon, love you both. Cheers, with a little scroll. Thank you, Prometheus.
What's going on, Prometheus? Hope you've been hiding that peanut. Don't share it with the humans. Don't share your peanut like it's evil. No, just kidding.
Thank you, Joe, for telling me that my corny joke was cool.
Yeah, I like it. It's very clever. Although it is a grain, though. Corn, I think, is a grain, so I don't want to get semantics on you.
It's vegetable-ese.
Vegetable-ese.
It's vegetable adjacent.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, growing up, you're told it's a vegetable, so I guess eat your corn. Eat your corn. But corn is a good way to feed armies too. Corn and wheat that's why I think the Romans use it as such a cool symbol. Like you see in the Gladiator when Russell Crowe is walking through those fields, touching the wheat. The last time I saw that, I was like, oh, it's probably because that's what feeds his armies. Like, isn't it crazy? Bread and circuses, baby.
Oh my.
But that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about the Tao, and I'm very excited again because it's one of my favorite topics. And today we're going to try to cover verses 3 and 4 in the time that we have. So I say let's get into it.
Sure.
I'll share the screen here so everybody can see our lovely slides that Sharon provided for us. Sharon does such a lot of work behind the scenes on the show, and I'm so thankful for her. We both do a good amount of work, but it's good that
thank you.
Sharon made these over Sharon, the Tao Te Ching.
Well, you're gonna hit verse 1 again, so
so I got to go back down. We're fast forwarding. If you want to see these, go back to last week. Verse
Yeah.
3, which is great because we started at 3:33 and 3:44 now Eastern
Oh,
Standard Time. So threes are very all over the place right now, which is great. 3 kind of reminds me of a
this
crab,
one.
right? The cancer crab. All right. So how do we decide on doing this? These ones look short. So do you want to just read through each version and then go through piece by piece?
Yes, read through each, and then we'll do the piecemeal versions after that.
All right, awesome. Here we go. If you overesteem great men, people become powerless. If you overvalue possessions, people begin to steal. The master leads by emptying people's minds and filling their cores, by weakening their ambition and toughening their resolve. He helps people lose everything they know, everything they desire, and creates confusion in those who think that they know. Practice not doing, and everything will fall into place. And this is from the Stephen Mitchell 1988 version. So I forgot to say that before I started.
Yeah, no worries. The Dwight Goddard from 1919, he entitles this verse, Quieting People. Neglecting to praise the worthy deters people from emulating them, just as not prizing rare treasures deters a man from becoming a thief. Or ignoring the things which awaken desire keeps the heart at rest. Therefore, the wise ruler does not suggest unnecessary things, but seeks to satisfy the minds of his people. He seeks to allay appetites, but strengthen bones. He ever tries, by keeping people in ignorance, to keep them satisfied, and those who have knowledge he restrains from evil. If he himself practices restraint, then everything is in quietness.
Quietness. And maybe we should talk about the number 3 a little bit, because not that we have to get too far into it, but the 3 does represent the Trinity, and it could represent the masculine, which is the 1, the feminine, which is the 2, coming together to create the 3rd. So just keep that in mind as we read this. Maybe we can see how that applies. All right. The version from 1984, which is like the most infamous year ever. Without Seeking Acclaim by Stan Rosenthal, 1984. By retaining his humility, the talented person who is also wise reduces rivalry. The person who possesses many things but does not boast of his possession reduces temptation and reduces stealing. Those who are jealous of the skills or things possessed by others most easily themselves become possessed by envy. Satisfied with his possessions, the sage eliminates the need to steal. At one with the Tao, he remains free of envy and has no need of titles. By being supple, he retains his energy. He minimizes his desires and does not train himself in guile nor subtle words of praise. By not contriving, he retains the harmony of his inner world and so remains at peace within himself. It is for reasons such as these that an administration which is concerned with the welfare of those it serves does not encourage status and titles to be sought, nor encourage rivalry. Ensuring a sufficiency for all helps in reducing discontent. Administrators who are wise do not seek honors for themselves, nor act with guile towards the ones they serve.
Hmm.
Mm.
And now the Aleister Crowley, Quieting Folk. To reward merit is to stir up emulation. To prize rarities is to encourage robbery. To display desirable things is to excite the disorder of covetousness. Therefore, the sage governeth men by keeping their minds and their bodies at rest, contenting the one by emptiness, the other by fullness. He satisfieth their desires, thus fulfilling their wills, and making them frictionless. And he maketh them strong in body to a similar end. He delivereth them from the restlessness of knowledge and the cravings of discontent. As to those who have knowledge already, he teacheth them the way of non-action. This being assured, there is no disorder in the world.
Mm.
Very nice.
I like it. Let's go back up here. And I like it how this verse concerns itself with how people should rule, right?
Mm,
Administrators or rulers of
mm.
governments or of a company. And if you take the as above, so below, you can even look at these as guides as to rule your inner self. Like Mark Passio talks about outward art anarchy and inward monarchy, which means like inwardly you want to have a tight monarchy over yourself, know thyself, and then outwardly anarchy, which just means no rulers, so nobody to tell you what to do. And we always talk about how, because they use the word master here in the Stephen Mitchell version, and a true master is just somebody who mastered their own brain, is the way we look at it. Whereas somebody that's a slave, it's just because they're a slave to their own mind. And then they allow themselves to become slaves of other people who are masters. Some masters could be quote unquote good, or some masters could be quote unquote evil. Most people are a mix of all, I would say, but or mix of both. But it's that same kind of energy. So I like that. And going along with that, in this first part of the Stephen Mitchell version from 1988, it says, if you overesteem great men, you become powerless. If you overvalue possessions, people begin to steal. And I like it because it's very simple. And it basically just says, if you're going to put somebody on a pendulum, somebody else has to be.
Pedestal.
Oh yeah, sorry. I always do that. If you're going to put somebody else on a pendulum, somebody else is
They're
going to
gonna
be
swing you,
If you get put on a pendulum, you're going to be in the pit with Edgar Allan Poe. It was a faux Poe instead of a faux pas. I had a Poean slip.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I like this. So it's so simple, and it's just a straight fact. You can overesteem men if you want, but if you overesteem you can overesteem great men if you want, but if you do, people become powerless. And if you overvalue possessions, people begin to steal. So it's just really talking about a frame of mind here, in my view. Like if you have this materialistic frame of view, point of view, worldview, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah. And then if you look at the Dwight Goddard version, he kind of does it in I would say, what is it called, on the apophatic way a little bit. He kind of does the negative view. So if you don't praise the worthy, you deter people from emulating them. So it just kind of keeps everything in a balance, right? Because if you put, like Brandon was saying, you put somebody up on a pedestal, then everybody's going to want to be like them. And again, that's Stephen Mitchell version says people become powerless. Why? Because they're not standing on their own. They're not viewing themselves as having power. They're like, oh no, I want to be like that person. So that gives away their own power. And then the prizing rare treasures part, he says, not prizing a rare treasure deters a man from becoming a thief. So if you don't say, ooh, look at this diamond, it is this, that, and the other, then people aren't going to be attracted to that diamond and want it and try to steal for it just because it's so rare, or it's so this, that, and the other. So he's kind of putting like the apophatic way of looking at it, I think, which sometimes for me is like hard to read, because I'm like, wait, if you, there's a lot of nots and nays and no's. So it confuses me sometimes, but it helps to have the different versions. So the last one is ignoring the things which awaken desire keeps the heart at rest. So again, it's kind of a balance.
Yeah, I like that too, because you have to kind of navigate your way through things like that. It's like a parable, but you literally have to like say, okay, not which way are we pointing here, and nor neglecting, like what are they trying to say? So it really makes you kind of slow down and break it down, which I like. And again, like you said, the apophatic method is awesome, because they're not making claims in this one, right? It seems in the other one he's making claims, but they do say if. So
yeah.
But yeah, no, that's great. And I like how they add the clarifying line, or ignoring the things which awaken desire keeps the heart at rest. So he gives you both the negative and the positive in that one, which is great. So you have the negative, which not prizing rare treasures, and then or ignoring. So it's actually, if you do that, yeah. All right, let's scroll down to the wordy version. Stan Rosenthal's 1984 sword version. All right, let's see. By retaining his humility.
Wait, if you don't mind, go back
Yeah.
to the other one just to see what the title was again.
Oh yeah,
Just to look and compare. Quieting people.
Oh,
So
yeah,
quieting people without seeking acclaim, and then quieting folk. Isn't it funny how the two from the 1920s era are very similar?
Yeah, it really is. I like that. It leads me to believe that one of these guys read the other ones.
It feels that way.
Yeah, I think it was probably Aleister Crowley. I bet he at least took a peek at the other one, I would say. But I'm sure he,
but
go ahead.
I mean, it was written in 1990. It was published in 1919. Like, I don't know. I mean, I suppose maybe they knew each other, and maybe he sent it to him to read it or something.
Yeah, it's quite possible. Also, because Aleister Crowley's wasn't ever, he could have had a different version and then rewrote it, you never know, because it didn't come out till after he died, like way later, till 1976, the year of my birth. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is without seeking acclaim. By retaining his humility, the talented person who is also wise reduces a rivalry. The person who possesses many things but does not boast of his possessions reduces temptation and reduces stealing. Those who are jealous of the skills or things possessed by others most easily themselves become possessed by envy. And it's
Can you scroll down just a little bit? Sorry, just to see the names.
Oh, right here?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I would say it's this airy, swordy version of just breaking everything down, explaining it to somebody who's really trying to pay attention. Maybe they're not as symbolically literate, or you're trying to explain to an audience that's maybe more normie or something like that,
Yeah. The X may be exoteric as well.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just looking again through. The person who possesses many things but does not boast of his possessions reduces temptation.
And that's true.
Yeah, and reduces stealing. So here again, I like also how in all these verses they are putting the actions of the many onto the one person, kind of like, well, it's not your fault. I mean, it's they're kind of, how can I put this? They're saying, if you got something stolen from you, you might feel like a victim, but they're telling you, no, this is why people get jealous and want to steal things, because you're sitting here bragging about all the stuff you got, like.
Yeah.
Bomb.
Yeah, this is really this really kind of drills it down.
Yeah, and I also like how they'll tell you, like, if you are jealous, skills or things possessed by other most easily them, and then you'll become possessed by envy more easily because of this.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, but let's read Aleister Crowley's, and then we could do it.
Aleister Crowley says, quieting folk. To reward merit is to stir up emulation. To prize rarities is to encourage robbery. To display desirable things is to excite the disorder of covetousness. Wow. Yeah.
I like that. Now, see, somebody could say maybe, here, I'll bring it back to us for a minute, because there is a bone of contention here you can have, because you're like, well, am I not supposed to praise people when they do well then? Like, are we not supposed to tell someone they're doing a good job or positively reinforce them? Like, what's going on with that? And I think it's not saying that you shouldn't do all these things. It's just telling you what could happen if you do it. Right. So it's like a warning. So I think everything really, because if you look at the Tao, everything's really a balance. So I think this is really meant for people or a society that's just like out of balance. So it could be even kind of trying to tell you, because if you think of the story of Lao Tzu, he was supposed to be leaving this kingdom that was like going downhill, and he was like, I'm out of here, guys. So if you take in that frame of mind, in that in that context, then I think that this totally makes sense. So it's not that you can't give somebody positive reinforcement or telling them they're doing a good job. It's just that you got to be careful when you start to put people on a pedestal, right? I mean, that's kind of how I see it. Whereas there's nothing they can do that are wrong. He's a great man and he never does anything wrong. And I'm going to listen to whatever he says or whatever she says and follow them down in abundance of glory. That's kind of what we see. Especially in this, look at like, people who run for president, for example, right? Something we don't really talk about on the Oversharing show, but everyone in the United States anyway, we have a president who's supposed to be the person who like runs the country. And you
not my president.
Not my president. And you get people on both sides of this who, if you take Trump, for example, the orange-haired Trump, he might have a lot of good ideas and he might say a lot of things that you like, but you got to look at his actions. And then a lot of people who follow him will kind of forgive him for the stuff he does. And then they always point the finger at like Joe Biden or whatever, the other side. And then the people who support Joe Biden, it's the same thing. They're like, well, at least it's not Trump, right? No matter what he's doing. So it's kind of like they're both right. They both point out, people on both sides will point out the terrible things that the other side does. It's like, yeah, you're right. But then where's that mirror? What about your side?
Good point.
Yeah, so it breaks down to all that stuff. So, but nobody that really listens to this show, I don't think has that issue, but it's just a nice little analogy. There's all kinds of things in life that you could look at this way. And again, it's not that we're not saying you shouldn't give people positive reinforcement or whatever. Well, where are you going, Kitty? What are you doing? Kitty's just like all up on my table. But yeah, so all right, let's go back to the let's go back and break down the other versions.
Hey, just a random question real quick. When we're showing up on the screen, it looks like it's much smaller than usual. Usually it like fills up the whole screen, but I don't know. I don't know if you're doing something differently.
Where it says Zoom, you're saying?
Yeah.
Like when it's just us?
Yeah, when it's just us, it like it's like there's a lot of black surrounding us, and I feel like when we've done it before, it doesn't do that. So I don't know if you're doing something different.
Sometimes when we record them ahead of time, I could cut those out or make it smaller, but I don't know. I could always check the settings here. Let's come back to us.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
Maybe there's something in the settings that just do a couple of things.
Not
But
a big
we
deal.
shout out the chat really quick. Anything going on in the chat we could talk about while I'm
Gordy came in. He said hi.
Oh, what's up, Gordy?
And Quiet Sparky Bear said he's got a celebration of life for his father on Sunday, and his birthday is on Monday. So, sending much love to Chris and his family, and blessings for his born day, his birth day.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't see any settings that might affect that right now. So
yeah, no worries.
All right. You get to see Aleister. Just zoom in, everybody, if you want to see us. All right, let's go back to the old Tao, shall we? Here we go. All right, so we'll scroll back up so we can read the bottom part of. Oops.
Oh no, you're there.
I'm far now. Okay, Stephen. So from the Stephen Mitchell 1988 version. The second part, the master, which we talked about what master means in this context. Well, that's kind of how we interpret it anyway. The master leads by emptying people's minds and filling their cores, by weakening their ambition and toughening their resolve. He helps people lose everything they know, everything they desire, and creates confusion in those who think that they know. Practice not doing, and everything will fall into place. And I love this because in the beginning, it talks about overesteeming great men and about overvaluing things. And then here it kind of tells you the right way to do it by emptying people's minds and filling their cores. So it's a way to not go at it from the I would say from like the idealistic point of view, trying to convince somebody something with your swords. You're trying to tell them your ideas that you just discovered. Like, wait, you really think space is real? Let me tell you why this is just silly. Or you think we really went to the moon and they called the president on a phone in the 60s, like from the moon, But instead of doing that, this is more about filling their core. So it's kind of like an earthy thing, I think, or maybe something to do with the heart, because you think of the core is the heart, or even like the solar plexus and stuff. Those chakras, right? It's about not about the throat chakra. It's more about the lower chakras and connecting with people on a like a more primeval, ancient way of connecting with people. And it's kind of about finding common ground with people. I think you could say this is, you're not trying to fill their minds with all your ideas. You're just trying to be a capybara and hang out with them,
Like
and
Jesus.
yeah, exactly. And by weakening their ambitioning and toughening their resolve. And I the thing about ambition too, they talk about a lot in like Western, like Buddhism and Western or Eastern religions. They talk about this kind of stuff. Maybe even like Hinduism, about ambition and how it's, because people in the West here, they're like, well, ambition is good. You need some ambition to get going and do stuff. But the context that I found, the way I interpret it, is it's more about the ego and the ambition of the ego, the small I, more like what you want to do as opposed to what the right thing to do is. So when you have this ambition, it's more about what you want to do, I guess you could say, for yourself, or how you think things should be, instead of kind of following the path of the Tao, or kind of following the plan, sticking to the plan, right? Trust the plan. This is more about going and doing your own thing, and then toughening their resolve. That I think is more about making them tough, as opposed to making them tough with their ambitions. So you can get kind of stubborn. It's more about taking that stubbornness and putting it into their feet, into the ground, and where they're gonna like last longer and have more stamina when it comes to all this stuff that may come to them. Yeah, and boundaries also too. Yeah, and to stick to those boundaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what that toughening the resolve is, I would say, is about. And then he helps people lose everything they know. So it's kind of an opposite of the beginning, where he says the master leads by emptying people's minds. So then you'd say he helps people lose everything they know, everything they desire, and creates confusion in those who think that they know. And I like this too, because it's kind of like, we'll get to this eventually, but those who know don't talk, and those who talk don't know, which is one of the verses of the Tao.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of thing, where people who think they know, these people are experts in one area and they think they know this stuff and they have all this stuff down. But again, they're going with their ambition. They're going with their, I guess, with their ego, or the physical. They're putting the physical above spirit in that whole, enterprise that they're taking on. So this is kind of like he's saying the master creates confusion in those people, instead of like trying to show all these people that, how do you think they went to the moon? You just show them a crazy video, and that creates confusion,
Like the Stanley Kubrick one.
Yeah, exactly. And he helps people lose everything they know, which is another thing. It's kind of like the dark night of the soul, right? He helps people, but he doesn't do it. He just helps people. So this, again, is kind of like somebody who's ready, somebody who's knocking on the door and wants this information, this knowledge, or whatever it is, they want their eyes to be open to it. He helps them. He assists them into losing everything they knew, or they thought they knew, and everything they desire. So he also helps them figure out desires, which is huge in Eastern religions as well. They always talk about mastering your desires, and how desires like are going to lead you right to hell and all this stuff. So you're kind of just helping people with this stuff. Same thing. And then practice not doing, which is like we were talking about last week, and maybe the week before, the doing, not doing. This is kind of like when he's saying not doing here, I'm looking at it as you're not
flow
trying.
state.
Yeah, a flow state. Exactly. There you go, Sharon. You're just in a flow state. You're not trying to kick the ball. You're just kicking the ball. Like Yoda says, there is no try. There's do or do not. You're just out there doing it, and everything falls into place. You're trusting the
You're
plan.
just being.
Yeah. If you look at all these
You're
crazy,
being the I am.
yeah, you are. And if you look at all the crazy synchronicities that happen around us, we talk about this all the time. We probably used to talk about synchronicities more, but they still never fail to happen. And to me, they're kind of just like winks and nods that you're on the right path. And if you're having all these synchronicities, sometimes people get doubt and fear that come into their life. And they're like, is this the thing I should be really doing? Is this really my path? Is this what I should do? Or am I doing the wrong thing? This is kind of that whole, it's speaking to that. And I think that comes also from people not loving themselves or not having enough self-love to not think that they're a part of this amazing creation. I'm looking outside right now and I'm seeing beautiful trees with a gray sky over it. Like it looks like it's about to do lightning or whatever, but it's just beautiful. And people tend to think that we're just our own little bubbles. We have nothing to do with the effect of this, and all this crazy stuff that's happening around us has nothing to do with us. We're not good enough for it, or whatever it is, right? Like Luke Skywalker, he's like, how can I be this? Or you think about like Dune, we talk about Dune a lot, like Paul Atreides, like he's like, how can I really be the Lisan Al Gaib? Is this really me? It's that whole struggle that the heroes go through in the hero journey. And it's a lot of different stories where they go through this struggle where they don't think that they're worthy, that they're good enough. And I think that happens to each and every one of us. And that's why a lot of this doubt and fear comes in. But once we realize that we are part of this plan, and that God or the creator or whatever it is, even if it's our higher selves, has a lot of love for us. Just like the quote in the beginning, we're not, think of us like a wave in the ocean. We're not the entire ocean, but we're like a wave of that ocean. So we are kind of a whole piece of that thing. And without us, it all fall out of place. Without even just you, whoever's listening to this, without your little presence, this whole thing would make no sense. You're part of the great dance. And I think that's kind of what this is talking about.
Yeah.
Like,
and it also reminds me, what you were talking about reminds me of how I feel like Christianity causes people to have this low view of themselves because they're, quote, born in sin. And it makes people feel unable and not worthy. So it's really unfortunate that it does that, that people do that.
yeah, I feel like you can even say just like the direct like the teachings that Rome took and all that stuff, right? We could just attack that Christianity. So some people could say, oh, they're just attacking the Catholics or whatever. Sure, whatever. But I'm sure a lot of dogmatic offshoots of this Roman creation are pretty much the same. But I don't want to single out the Christians who are living just like Christ, right? Or I don't want to leave them. I don't want to also demonize them because they don't even need the Tao. They have all the teachings they need right there. And if they're living in that accordance, it's great. But you're right, exactly, with that original sin thing, it's the same thing. It's just giving you shame. Like shame on you. You're just one of these little peons. And that also, though, leads people in that religion who now have maybe gotten baptized and they're like higher up and they're, going to church and reading their Bible.
Spiritual egos.
Yeah, it gives them that spiritual ego. And then they can point to other people and say, oh, poor them. Poor, Joe, or poor Ralph, poor these people, they're going to go to hell, but I'm better than them.
They're putting themselves on a pedestal.
It's the same thing. They're over-esteeming great men, right? And that's what it is, because when you over-esteem a great man, you're not doing anybody any favors. You're not doing that great man any favors, because sometimes people get those ideas in their head and they start
their ego.
Yeah, their egos, and we've seen that happen time and time and again in this community with different people. And again, though, it's all beautiful. It's all part of the Tao. It's all just a great dance, because I feel like it just brings up other areas and other opportunities for people to learn these lessons, and they're just going to get crazier each time, so that's
Yeah.
why I don't have any like hate or anything for these people.
Yeah, no, not at all. But the other thing I was going to say is that this whole mentality of I'm not worthy, or I was born in sin, or I'm a sinner, and I'm not perfect. And that whole attitude doesn't let people believe what Jesus told them, that greater works than these shall you do. Because he was just saying, you're going to be able to do greater things than even I did. And they can't believe that. They're like, they put Jesus on a pedestal. And it's like, he didn't even put himself on a pedestal. He said you could do greater works than he could. And people don't want to believe that. They just can't. That's something I noticed when I was going to church. It's like they couldn't possibly believe that they could do these things too, or that they could be like Jesus. It's like, oh no, I can't be like Jesus. I can only maybe aspire to be maybe half the man Jesus was. And it's like, why can't you be like Jesus and better? Because he said you could.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing that reminds me of when you talk about that is when Jesus was tempted, he went out into the desert, for whatever, 40 days to fast.
Mm-hmm.
And he meets the devil, according to the Bible. And if there's so many clues in there, and this part of the Bible kind of gets glossed over a lot, or people might use it to like prove flat earth or whatever, because they're like, oh, if you could see the whole world, or but which is a good point. I'll give it to him that, but I think one of the other important true messages of this is if he was fasting. Now, if you've ever done some fasting, and if you went into a desert for 40 days, you're going to talk to people, you're going to see things, you're going to probably have hallucinations, right? And what the core of that was he was having this vision, and maybe he really was brought up above the realm and shown everything. I wasn't there, I don't know, but he had this view of that. Listen, man, with this knowledge that you have, you could become a king, you could lead people, you could have whatever you want in this world. You could do it. This materialistic world is you unlock the keys. And that's like everybody that goes through this. If you take the 40 days of like the dark, you could use that as like the dark night of the soul. You're reborn and you discover this occulted knowledge. And a lot of people take that path where they're like, wow, I can manifest things now. And then they go, like we were talking about our friend Joe, how he manifested this beautiful house and this place to live, but he still wasn't happy. And then it kind of went away once he lost interest in it and all this stuff in a very synchronistic way. It's the same thing. And I think a lot of people get stuck on that because this physical realm is very like all these desires that are there. I mean, you could just have fun. There's so many things you could do once you learn this stuff. You can manipulate people pretty easily. You find a lot of people in the society who are like acting like slaves to their own brain. You could get a lot of those people behind you to follow you if you have a little bit of truth. And you might not even be doing a bad thing. You might think you're saving the world, right? You might be like, this is how we're going to save everybody. But did you save yourself? Because if you didn't save yourself, then you can't save anybody else. So, yeah, I love that part of the Bible, with the whole tempting and how people interpret it. But I've always thought that was a pretty cool interpretation. I'm like, what about on a one-on-one? Like, if we got to go through the path of Jesus, then we all have to go through this path of temptation. And that really is, I mean, it could be whatever, but this is, I think, a lot of the temptation, especially when you get into this occult stuff. And that's why so many people think it's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a firearm.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. And if you think
it is dangerous to some people.
Maybe you shouldn't be handling it until you get some training, some proper training or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. But anyway, let's get back into this Tao, unless you have something to say about that.
No, that's all
I just saw you smiling, so I see that you agreed with you liked what I was saying. Yeah. All right, so go. You want to read the next on the Dwight Goddard? Is that where we were?
Yeah, Dwight Goddard version, that second half of this verse 3 says, therefore, the wise ruler does not suggest unnecessary things, but seeks to satisfy the minds of his people. He seeks to allay appetites, but strengthen bones. He ever tries by keeping people in ignorance to keep them satisfied, and those who have knowledge he restrains from evil. If he himself practices restraint, then everything is in quietness. Now, what I find interesting about this is that if I hadn't read Stephen Mitchell's, I would be a little bit confused by what he was just saying with he ever tries by keeping people in ignorance to keep them satisfied, and those who have knowledge he restrains from evil, because I think that some of these other verses kind of help to explain sometimes a little bit of sometimes it gets a little esoteric.
Yeah.
And a little like deep.
Yeah. I'm glad you chose these 4 different versions, because they really are. This is, what do we say? This is like the earthly one. Is that what we said? This is like the Pentacles.
I think you did say this one's more earthy.
Yeah. And I also like at the end, well, I guess let's expand on that. So he ever tries by keeping people in ignorance to keep them satisfied. So really it's kind of talking about woke raping. He's not trying to like go beyond what people's worldview is. He's just the master. So this is really when it comes to dealing with people, like even one-on-one situations or groups of people, he's just trying to keep them satisfied, I guess, in their ignorance, right?
Yeah. Keep them right where they're at, right where they need to be.
Yeah, that's a better way to put it.
Maybe.
And those who have knowledge, he restrains them from evil. So if you do come across somebody who is into all this stuff, he's pointing them in by evil. He's basically, if you look at it internally, the good and evil thing, he's basically just trying to put them on their own path, right? To keep them from doing evil, which would be not doing their path. So he just in those, let's see, he ever tries, and there we go, there's trying, where we're saying you don't try. Well, right here, because you really can't control what anybody else does, you can only not try if it's you. But when you're dealing with somebody else, you can try to do these things, and this is what you kind of attain to, I guess you could say, to restrain them from evil. But and then after that, what I was going to say was it goes back to you. So if he himself, so this is, he's talking to you. If you practice restraint, then everything is in quietness. And it's kind of like leading by example, right?
Yeah. I love that. It reminds me of another verse in the Tao that you just talked about earlier, is that those who know don't speak. And those who speak don't know. Everything is in quietness.
Exactly.
There's like a deep level of understanding, of comprehension between two people or whatever.
And we could go backwards, I guess, in this, and it says he seeks to allay appetites but strengthen bones.
Mm-hmm.
So he's trying to strengthen that root, the core, your bones, or whatever that is. So it could not even be your physical bones, it could be your spiritual bones. He's trying to strengthen that for you. You're trying to get rid of your fear, really, is what I see here. And the whole thing with not suggesting unnecessary things, that kind of reminds me, going back to like the presidents, how they always have these things that they run on, like these platforms that they run on, like we're going to build a wall or whatever, all these things. But instead of suggesting unnecessary things, the wise ruler just seeks to satisfy the minds of his people, to keep their minds satisfied and not have them running and chasing like devils or whatever, or evil people or scapegoats.
And then that he seeks to allay appetites is he's alleviating their desires, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you think of appetites, it could be like spiritual appetites or physical appetites. It doesn't just have to be food. And that's the thing with knowing words. Once you know how words work, you don't get so stuck in one meaning of that, right?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to read the Stan Rosenthal version from Seeking Without Acclaim, part 2 of this.
Without seeking acclaim.
Without seeking acclaim. Seeking acclaim. Satisfied with his possessions, the sage eliminates the need to steal. At one with the Tao, he remains free of envy and has no need of titles. By being supple, he retains his energy. He minimizes his desires and does not train himself in guile nor subtle words of praise. By not contriving, he retains the harmony of his inner world, and so remains at peace within himself. It is not for reasons such as these.
It is for reasons.
It is for reasons such as these that an administration, which is concerned with the welfare of those it serves, does not encourage status or titles to be sought, nor encourage rivalry. Ensuring a sufficiency for all helps in reducing discontent. Administrators who are wise do not seek honors for themselves, nor act with guile towards the ones they serve.
Yeah. I like how this is about, like you said, leadership and like how people can rule honorably.
Yeah, and it's not telling you what to do. It's just giving you a guide. It says the sage, this is if you want to be a sage and attain to be what the title of sage encompasses, this is the way the sages act, right? So you want to aspire toward this stuff, because again, you could fail. You could try to not have desires, or you could try to do this stuff, but you can fail. And then sometimes people get all wrapped up and they get hard on themselves when they fail, and then they just punish themselves even further. But I think that's not really what this is about. It's not like a strict code of things you have to do, like the 10 Commandments, like thou shalt not. This is just saying, listen, if you want to be like a sage, you just do it like this. That's all.
Yes. I like that. I don't know that this really needs any explanation, right? It's just like really, this is very clear.
Yeah, it is pretty clear. Probably because it's the Sorority version, the air version. He breaks it so fully.
Yeah, he really breaks it down. And then the Aleister Crowley quieting folk says, therefore, the sage governeth men by keeping their minds and their bodies at rest, contenting the one by emptiness, the other by fullness. He satisfieth their desires, thus fulfilling their wills, and wow, I'm just thinking about a lot of things as I'm reading this, and making them frictionless. And he maketh them strong in body to a similar end. He delivereth them from the restlessness of knowledge and the cravings of discontent. As to those who have knowledge already, he teacheth them the way of non-action. This being assured, there's no disorder in the world. This one's, I feel, very similar to the Goddard version from 1919.
Yeah, 100%. And I like how he uses the word sage also in this version. So maybe Stan Rosenthal read this in 1980 or 1976 before he made his 1984 version.
Yeah,
it is quite possible. And I like how he says the sage governeth men by keeping their minds and their bodies at rest, contenting the one by emptiness, the other by fullness. So again, it's just like you're speaking to people at their level, right? Like, so some people need to be empty, some people need to be full. And
do you think it's referring to mind and body too? Contenting the one, the mind.
Oh yeah, there you go.
And the body. I just saw that. I don't know. It could be.
Oh yeah, contenting one by emptiness and the other by fullness. So yeah, he's keeping the mind. Yeah, exactly, Sharon. He's keeping their mind empty and their body full.
Or the other way around, whichever works.
Yeah. I like that. And satisfieth their desires, thus fulfilling their wills and making them.
You were talking about the way, their path, like their dharma. I think you were saying something about that earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Fulfilling their will. So these desires are a little bit different, I think, than the desires that are referred to maybe in another version. And maybe this is really just about using people's desire to want to follow their own path, using that desire and satisfying that desire and fulfilling their will. So I think it was Ram Dass said, like, we talk about all these desires and how they're bad, but like, you need to use them sometimes. You need to use the desire to want to clean up your act to clean it up.
Do it till you're done.
Do it till you're done. And then once if it's meditation or whatever tool it is, you use that kind of like if you get a splinter and you have another little piece of wood to get that splinter out. And then when they're both out, you throw them both away, until you get another splinter. So
go ahead.
I was going to say it's about like not being detached, not being attached.
Correct. Yeah. And then the making them frictionless, that's kind of making me think of like, being in the flow state, right? The doing, not doing.
Yeah. I love his choice of word here, frictionless, because if you think of the physical world, it's all about friction.
Yeah.
Right. Or you could just go with the flow. And that's really what this is about, flow state.
Right.
And by doing that, he makes them strong in body to a similar end, basically. So, and I like the two that he delivereth them from the restlessness of knowledge. That's hilarious because it kind of reminds me of truthers that are obsessed with everything that's going on all the time. Like they just seek all this knowledge and they want to know constantly. I was kind of like that in the beginning of 2020. I was just like that. I wanted to know everything that was going on with the 2020 event, we'll say. I was like watching not like I was watching news and stuff, but I was still like looking at all the stuff and this and that. And it was really making me discontent, right? But it was like a craving for it. So,
yeah.
And that's one type of person, right? And then, and to those who have knowledge knowledge already, he teacheth them the way of non-action. Yeah. So people who kind of get it, but are still stumbling or whatever, you could just tell them about all this stuff, like non-action, not doing.
Yeah.
And basically he's saying to not have disorder in this world is to do that. If everybody lived this way,
Yeah. And then also kind of like that everything is perfect. Does the Tao say that somewhere?
That the world is perfect? Yeah.
Yeah. Like just as it is.
Yeah. There's a verse that goes something like, do you want to change the world? I don't think it could be done.
Well, we'll get there one of these days.
Yeah. The world is perfect. If you tamper with it, you will ruin it. Something like that.
Nice.
Or the world is sacred.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it took us an hour just to get through one verse.
Nice.
Well, not 2 minutes shy.
An hour because we did spend.
We did.
On the introductions. All right, let's jump into the next one then.
Yeah.
This one seems like it's a shorter verse, so maybe we can get through it in a quicker amount of time. But we'll see. We're oversharing here. What are you gonna do? All right. So in this verse 4, so we kind of talk about fours a little bit. Fours are a foundation. So you have the 3, you got the birth, something's going, it's going well, but then think about like starting your whole family and setting up a home and all this stuff. That's the 4. You get the 4 corners of the stable structure. It's a foundation. So in that view, with that being said, I'm going to read this. So the Tao is like a well, used but never used up. It is like the eternal void, filled with infinite possibilities. It is hidden but always present. I don't know who gave birth to it. It is older than God. How dare you?
Oh my gosh. So it's cool because of the verses that follow from the various translations will say something that kind of I don't know, it helped me kind of see the different perspectives on that last line. So you'll see. All right. So Dwight Goddard entitled this verse, Tao without origin. The Tao appears to be emptiness, but it is never exhausted. Oh, it is profound. It appears to have preceded everything, which reminds me of that last line in Stephen Mitchell's. It dulls its own sharpness, unravels its own fetters, softens its own brightness, identifies itself with its own dust. Oh, it is tranquil. It appears infinite. I do not know from what it proceeds. It even appears to be antecedent to the Lord. And I find this so interesting that he adds to the Lord. The Lord. It's funny, you know. I don't know. It's interesting he uses that word.
Yeah. So like, are they trying to postulate that the creator was following the Tao? You know, like,
Yeah, we'll see.
if it's the way, then maybe that's the way that God created as well, as above so below. And yes, we will see. Look how long the Stan Rosenthal version
Dude,
is.
this one was a pain in the butt to like squeeze in here.
It's like tiny. You got to like put like tiny font, you know, or like what?
Oh my gosh.
It is the nature of the Tao that even though used continuously, it is replenished naturally. Oh, I like that. Never being emptied and never being overfilled, as is a goblet, which spills its contents upon the ground. The Tao, therefore, cannot be said to waste its charge, but constantly remains a source of nourishment for those who are not so full of self as to be unable to partake of it. Ooh.
Mm.
When tempered beyond its natural state, the finest blade will lose its edge. Even the hardest tempered sword against water is of no avail, and it will shatter if struck against a rock. When untangled by a cutting edge, the cord in little pieces lies, and it is of little use. Just as the finest swordsmith tempers the finest blade with his experience, so the sage with wisdom tempers intellect. With patience, tangled cord may be undone, and problems which seemed insoluble resolved. With wise administrators, all can exist in unity, each with the other, because no man need feel that he exists, only as the shadow of his brilliant brother. Through conduct not contrived for gain, awareness of the Tao may be maintained. This is how its mysteries may be found. And I like this one has no reference to God at all here, or saying it's older than God, right?
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, I noticed that. So this one he entitled The Unfathomable Tao. Notice, because there's also no reference to God or a source, right? I think Aleister Crowley says the spring without source. So that's referring back to like source, God, etc. And then not Neville Goddard, the Dwight Goddard version. Can you scroll back a little bit again one more time? Says he entitled it Tao without origin. So he's also speaking of the origin, right? So scroll back down.
There is no, so what they're saying is the Tao basically isn't source. It's not the source, but it's the rule that source follows. And I like
very interesting.
Yeah, now Stan Rosenthal is talking about nature. It is the nature of the Tao, right? And then it is replenished naturally through nature, right? I like it.
Oh, this is very interesting. All right, Aleister Crowley's entitled his The Spring Without Source. The Tao resembleth the emptiness of space. To employ it, we must avoid creating ganglia. I don't remember what this means. O Tao, how vast art thou, the abyss of abysses, thou holy and secret father of all fatherhoods of things. Let us make our sharpness blunt. Let us loosen our complexes. Let us tone down our brightness to the general obscurity. O Tao, how still art thou, how pure, continuous one beyond heaven. This Tao hath no father. It is beyond all other conceptions, higher than the highest. Wow.
Maybe not higher than Snoop Dogg, though. That's pretty high. Yeah, no, I love this version. It's just because, like, I'm trying to think of what I kind of like lost what I was gonna say.
You want to save it, or you?
Yeah, we'll get back to when we read. But ganglia, I think ganglia has to do with like tentacles or like a growth or something, right?
All right, I looked it up. It says anatomy, a mass of nerve tissue existing outside the central nervous system, or
Oh,
any of certain masses of gray matter in the brain as the basal ganglia. But in pathology, it says a cyst or enlargement in connection with the sheath of a tendon, usually at the wrist. So I'm still not quite sure.
well, I think what he's trying to say is the Tao resembleth the emptiness of space. To employ it, we must avoid creating ganglia. So it's kind of like saying it's like worshiping false idols to some degree, right? It's kind of like saying don't think you have your own conception of what it is and make a podcast about it. Just kidding. You know, and create your own, because you said it's like a mass of nerves outside the central nervous system. So that the central nervous system is the Tao, creating ganglia would be like trying to create your own religion out of it or something.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, if it's to create your own the way you want to live, that's fine. But you're creating something for like everybody else. Like you have this ganglia going on.
Okay.
Maybe that's kind of what yeah.
Good. Thanks for that. That helps.
All right. Let's see if anyone in the chat said anything. No,
Not Snoop Dogg.
No. Oh, what's up, Zeralath? What's up, Stacy? What's going on, everybody? Oh, we're back to 10 people. Cool.
Sweet.
Hail, Zeralath.
Yes. That's what Balderson says. Hail.
Hail. All right. So back
Hail
up to,
no. Just kidding.
Hail to the no. It's 440, 44.
Oh, nice.
That was like a well used but never used up. It is like the eternal void filled with infinite possibilities. That's pretty simple, you know, just like what the other one says. It's
Yeah.
like you can never use it up, right? It's like a well, right? But it's not quite like a well because a well can eventually go dry
But
from what it tells.
allegedly, right? Unless there's no such thing as scarcity.
Yeah, but if you drill down deep enough, I'm sure you could probably find an eternal wellspring of water, right? It's the
Right.
same in with spirituality. You could get this kind of false spirituality, but when you get to you drill all the way down to the core of yourself, you're going to find this.
Well, it makes me think of Jesus when he met the woman at the well. Jesus met the woman at the well, Lord. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you did.
I think that was dang it, I forgot her name. Mahalia Jackson. There you go. But when he met the woman at the well and he told her that you'll like using this water that you're drinking, you're gonna thirst again, but the water that I give you, you'll never thirst again because it'll become an endless living waters within you or something like that.
Yeah, and it goes right back to like desires of the physical realm. Like once we get you over these desires, which listen, we're all working with this. We're not saying we're perfect. We're not the sage or the master here, everybody. We're just attaining to this, but I can speak for myself anyway. When you can overcome these desires of the flesh, you know, you'll overcome all this stuff and you'll see what the big picture is really about. And then you won't thirst for them anymore in the same way. And you could still do all these actions. You could still go skateboard if you want. It's just that you're not attached to it.
Yeah.
If it rains one day, you're not going to be sad because you can't go out and skateboard. You're going to find something else to do with your time.
Yeah.
So
the Dwight Goddard version, that first part says the Tao appears to be emptiness, but it is never exhausted. That's I like that because it gives you a different perspective. This one calls it like a well, so it's like referring to more like water, and this one's just talking about it appears to just be emptiness, like not really be there. So more like ether, dare we say. And then it is profound, and then it appears to have preceded everything. It dulls its own sharpness, unravels its own fetters, softens its own brightness, identifies itself with its own dust. That's kind of funny. So the appears to have preceded everything is kind of interesting that it's placed right there I think it refers back to maybe the part where he says in the Stephen Mitchell version, it is like the eternal void. And then there's that the Tao appears to be emptiness. That's like, I think that refers back to the eternal void part too. Like in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void.
Exactly.
All
And
right.
I also like how it says that it dulls its own sharpness, unravels its own feathers, all that kind of stuff. It reminds you of a balance, of a swing. It goes from dull to sharp. It goes from ravel
The
to unravel,
pendulum.
bright to soft. Yeah, exactly. There's the pendulum. So
Mhm.
it's just a rhythm. It reminds you a lot of the uh Kabbalion when it talks about the different ways that this realm works. All right. It is the nature of the Tao that even though used continuously, it is replenished naturally, never being emptied and never being overfilled, as is a goblet which spills its contents upon the ground. The Tao, therefore, cannot be said to waste its charge, but constantly remains a source of nourishment for those who are not so full of self as to be unable to partake of it. When tempered beyond its natural state, the finest blade will lose its edge. Even the hardest tempered sword against water is of no avail, and will shatter if struck against a rock. When untangled by a cutting edge, the cord in little pieces lies, and it is of little use. Just as the finest swordsmith tempers the finest blade with his experience, so the sage, with wisdom, tempers intellect with patience. Tangled cord may be undone, and problems which seem insoluble resolved. And it's this, again, the wordy, swordy kind of thing, but what I go to right away is the whole part about where it's kind of hard to explain these things to people, but this is the swordy version, so they're doing it. And it says the part where it says constantly remains a source of nourishment for those who are not so full of self as to be unable to partake of it. So he's kind of giving you a little hint here. Don't be so full of yourself. If you're following your ego, if the ego is the main gear you're stuck in, you're not going to be able to partake of it because you're not going to see it. It's going to be a paradox to you. It's not going to make sense because you're going to be like, well, what about me? What about what I want to do? Right. And again, it goes into, I'll just say kind of it mirrors the other ones in the whole untangling and the tangling and all that stuff, but it makes a little bit of a distinction because when untangled by a cutting edge, so again, if you're going to use swords, which is like ideas and the intellect, to untangle somebody's cord, you're going to leave them in little pieces and they're going to be of little use, right? So you have to temper your intellect with patience. Tangled cord may be undone, right? In any kind of problem that you see, instead of just attacking it and hacking at it, you let it undo itself in a way. And we were talking earlier about the new age, and this is where the new age could sneak in and tell you, oh, it'll just be fine, it'll do it all by itself. Well, that's not exactly true, but you can look at it in this way. If you're in a problem and you're stuck in something that seems like an insurmountable problem, you could just think to yourself, there has to be a way out. I've gotten out of every other thing, right? Every other thing has worked out. Maybe not the way I exactly wanted it, but look at where I am now. And I'm sure it's going to happen again. It's just like a cycle. Sometimes we have really hard days or a week or a month or hard years. But that's kind of what I think this is pointing to. It's like it'll untangle itself eventually. Yeah, you could hack at it if you want and cut it to pieces, but then it'll be of no use. It'll be of little use. So
very true. The Aleister Crowley
I
says,
don't think I read the title.
oh,
I guess it doesn't matter. The Unfathomable Doubt. But anyway, go ahead.
we talked about that earlier. Yeah, the unfathomable. Now, the spring without source from Aleister Crowley says, the Tao resembleth the emptiness of space. To employ it, we must avoid creating ganglia. O Tao, how vast thou art thou, the abyss of abysses, thou holy and secret father of all fatherhoods of things. Let us make our sharpness blunt. Let us loosen our complexes. Let us tone down our brightness to the general obscurity. And this is like a very esoteric reading of this, but he starts off with, it's like the emptiness of space. I think we talked about this in what the Dwight Goddard version, I think he was talking about the void, right? That we were just talking about. And Brandon was saying earlier, avoid creating that mass of tissue that's existing outside the central nervous system, which is what the definition of ganglia is. And then it says, "O Tao, how vast art thou, the abyss of abysses." So like it's like the bottomless pit, but not in a bad way, right? It's like it has no end. I think even the Bible says something to this effect of like just having no end, just the being lower than the lowest and higher than the highest. Like that thou holy and secret Father of all fatherhoods of things. Wow. I mean, I don't know. What do you say to that? I'll let you say something, Brandon.
I like it because he's it's his version. It seems more like he's speaking to like an entity, it kind of you think of like magic with a K, or like channeling and all this stuff. So he's like praising it, right, in a way. So he could even be kind of making fun of like the Christian church a little bit, but I like how he's saying how it's the secret father of all fatherhood, of the secret father of all fatherhoods and of things. So it's kind of like it's the one behind the scenes, and if you think of fatherhood as a lot of people look at God, and this
like
is
the Wizard of Oz. Just kidding.
Yeah. And I'm going to bring us back in, and you think about how a lot of people in our society, people think that people in the past, like you read the Bible, they were always like getting on their face and praising God, and they were always afraid of God and all these magical, mystical things. Well, what if that wasn't the case? What if a lot of people kind of got this stuff that they're talking about with the Tao, and they just put it into these words? So they're all kind of trying to tell you that, yeah, you might worship God and the creator and all this stuff, but this is the fatherhood of that father. So it's the same essence, the same spirit, but could it be that God himself is even following the Tao? Right. And then it reminds me of like the Alpha. I'm the Alpha and the Omega, right? I'm the beginning and the end. I'm all of it. So could God have just been giving a reference to the Tao? Like he was saying, I'm just looking, I'm doing my job. You do yours. I'm doing my duty. I created all this stuff. Now you go be a fun little creation and have your physical experience and learn your lessons and go do your thing, But I think a lot of people would have a problem with that, because then they would be like, no, but God is the ultimate. He created it all. Well, yeah, he had to have a method, though, of creation, right? And what if the Tao is just his method? The way, right? It's the eternal way. So,
like maybe the rules, not necessarily rules, but kind of like the guidelines of how God works.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. And if you think about the path of Jesus, and so many people say that Jesus is God. But if you look at his path, he was on that same godly path. So maybe that's why they thought he was God. Amazing.
Yeah, wow.
Let's bring it back. We'll bring it back to the top now. Unless you want to.
Well, I was just going to say that section about let us make our sharpness blunt. I mean, I don't know what he's trying to say there, but to me, it makes me think of like, kind of change the way you're viewing things. Like just because you think you have it figured out, you probably don't. So make your sharpness blunt. Like turn around the way you're viewing things and maybe look at it like the Hanged Man perspective. Look at it upside down.
Oh yeah.
Turn your view around. Turn your love around. Don't you turn me down. I don't know why I'm in this like song mode today.
It's a musical today. We might have to do an episode that's a musical. That'd be funny. It is the nature of the Tao that even though that's a wrong one to pick. That even though used continuously, it is replenished naturally, never being emptied and never being overfilled.
Lord.
Lord. It's the Oversharon musical. That'd be hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I also like the sharp, let us make our sharpness blunt. It's like you don't have to be so sharp and cutting and have to be right about everything, you know, like you said, maybe you're wrong. So just chill the F out and focus on your own thing, right? Loosen our complexes. So everything that's complex in our life or our complexities, we, you know, just loosen them up a little bit. Be chill, man. Tone it down. Tone down that brightness to the general obscurity. So you don't have to shine for everybody to see. You just got to do your own thing. And then, you know, you stick up too high, that, what do they say? The tallest nails get hammered down, you know, something like that. And I know I'm tall. And it kind of reminds me of being in the Marine Corps when I was in boot camp. When I first got there, like the first week, they had all these interviews with people. They were, you know, talking. It wasn't really an interview. You're just kind of sitting there and they're like, this is the one time they're not really yelling at you, but you still have to like look straightforward and all that. But they were telling me, you know, like, oh, you got really high scores and you're really smart and you're probably become an officer one day. And you go, you know, they were like hyping me up. You're like, oh, you're doing, and then that's what they said behind the doors. And then when I would go out to do all the boot camp stuff, they were like riding my ass hardcore, like more than other people. So I was like, oh, I get it. They're trying to gas me up to make me think I'm the best. And then in front of the other people, though, they're going to tear me down. So I'm going to be that example. So I just kind of like slid back into the crowd a little bit, you know, and just try to do my thing and not be noticed. And it went so much smoother. And in that same way, it's like life. It's like, do you want to be a star and like, you know, the most famous person in the world, or do you kind of just want to be back and do your own thing, you know? And but make sure you like, subscribe, guys, because you know we want to be stars in the Oversharon Show. Just kidding, we're our own stars. But yeah, no, that's kind of how.
Yeah, I mean, if you like it, hit the like button. You know, if you want to subscribe. We know that the people who like it will like it, and the people who want to subscribe will subscribe. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I think if we did start becoming popular, I mean, it's possible, but we would know that there's like a shift coming in the world. We'd be like, all right, what's gonna happen next? Like we're gonna have to start burning the Oversharon Show. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, I think it's kind of like that though. It's where he's saying, let us tone down our brightness to the general obscurity. So it's kind of like just blend in with the crowd. Like you don't have to stick out with all this stuff. It's more about going with the flow.
Indeed. You want to go back to the second part of.
All right. So from second part of verse 4 from the Stephen Mitchell version, it is hidden but always present. I don't know who gave birth to it. It is older than God. And it starts off right away with a contradiction. It is hidden but always present. So like, well, I don't see it, but it's there. It's like air. And I don't know who gave birth to it. It is older than God. So he's just kind of making a little bit of a statement here. Like, I don't know where it came from, but even the creator follows these rules. Like the way was around when the creator started his creation. That's how I look at it. And he did it in accordance with the way.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool. The Dwight Goddard version says, oh, it is tranquil. It appears infinite. I do not know from what it proceeds. It even appears to be antecedent to the Lord. Now, I think it's kind of funny that Stephen Mitchell says it is hidden but always present, but Dwight Goddard says it is tranquil. It appears infinite. It's a little bit just a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because tranquil and peaceful,
Tranquil and hidden. Yeah.
you
So
don't
maybe
really
because
notice.
it's peaceful, it's hidden and you don't notice it because it's peaceful and tranquil. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's always present as it's infinite. It doesn't have a beginning or an end.
World without end. Amen. All right. Let's Stan Rosenthal from the 1984 version. With wise administrators, all can exist in unity. Yeah, I always get scared when I hear administrator too. It's funny that this came out in 1984 and he's using words like administrator because, like, I'm pretty sure those are the people that were running the show in that book. With
That's
wise
fine.
administrators, all can exist in unity, each with the other, because no man need feel that he exists only as the shadow of his brilliant brother. Through conduct not contrived for gain, awareness of the Tao may be maintained. This is how the mysteries may be found. This is how its mysteries may be found. So I like how it says, because no man need feel that he exists. And I kind of just look at that as, you don't need to feel like you're important over other people. Like, you're not the center of the universe. You don't even need to feel like you exist. You're kind of just going with the flow. And again, it falls into like the new age thingy. But again, that's, we're not talking about all that stuff. We're talking about more of how to just live in flow, in the flow state.
I think it goes with the next line because it's like, because no man need feel that he exists only as the shadow of his brilliant brother.
Yes.
So, like you said, it's about other people, not just you.
Exactly. And the brilliant brother. So the one that's, got a
Like
little bit.
You're all brilliant.
Yeah. And we got a little bit of alliteration there too.
Yeah.
But you're viewing that brother as brilliant, right?
Right.
It's his shadow or her shadow. And also with wise administrators, which is hilarious because when do you ever have wise administrators? Never. Like, all can exist in unity. So guess what? We're just not going to exist in unity with any kind of government that we know of.
At least not in a Kali Yuga, maybe in a golden age.
Yeah, perhaps. But again, that's just going to require a place where there's nobody that needs a ruler. Right now it's kind of need a ruler. So I'm not even really shitting on the government. They're just answering the call of a group of people who can't figure it out for themselves, basically, at the end of the day. So, yeah. And through conduct, not contrived for gain. So that's pretty self-explanatory. If you're not trying, it goes back to the whole no man need feel that he exists thing. So if you're not doing stuff for gain, but if you're doing it because it's your path and it's your duty to do it, and you're not worried about the outcome, you're just focused on the work, then you can have awareness of the Tao. You might be aware of it, which means basically you're just going to be walking on your path. This is how its mysteries may be found. So, like, listen, this is a guide to it, but you got to do these things if you want to find out this mystery.
Yeah, and I find it hilarious that there's no mention of like it being older than God, right? Or like the two previous ones, for some reason, we're talking about being older than God or the Lord, and this one, for example, doesn't even mention it at all.
Yeah, I think he's like, this guy seems to be steering clear of religious objections or trying to attack any kind of other religion or any kind of comparison. He's basically just laying it out for you in the intellectual way. Yeah, I like that. Oh, Tao. That's so funny.
Yeah. Oh, Tao, how still art thou? How pure. This reminds me of How Great Thou Art song.
The God one or the Bible one?
Well, the Christian song, How Great Thou Art.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
So Aleister Crowley's version. O Tao, how still art thou, how pure, continuous one beyond heaven. This Tao hath no father, It is beyond all other conceptions, higher than the highest. And I think this one does kind of mention the whole, like, it's like this says the spring without source, right? So I think it's also kind of alluding to the no father thing, or sorry, the no older than God thing that the other two were talking about. But this one says it by saying this Tao hath no father. So this one's not comparing it to God at all. It's just saying there is nothing that begat this Tao. It just always was. And that reminds me of just, because sometimes the Bible or Christians will say like that, God has no father and God always existed and God is infinite, right? Never created and never going to cease. So it reminds me of that. But how still art thou? Interesting. It says how still. I don't know why, because what else? How still and how pure, continuous one beyond heaven. Yeah, I don't know like where that's coming from, because I don't really see that in any of the other versions.
Yeah. How still, how pure. It kind of, it's like going back to the first part of it, because in most of the other versions, they're talking about all this stuff in the first. So he's taking it beyond, right?
Yeah.
And this also kind of brings me back to the law of one, because in the law of one, we're all just consciousness at different levels, and there's higher levels, right? But so he's saying there's the highest of the high, you get the 7 levels and the other 7, and there's all this higher levels.
It's fractal.
It's fractal and it's never done, but the Tao is higher than all that. So he's
it's
further
beyond all that. Nice.
Yeah, he's further telling you that the Tao isn't something to be worshipped. And I think that's kind of what they're all apophatically saying here. The Tao isn't something to be worshipped. It's not a father, it's not a creator or whatever. It's just the rules. It's the way it works, right? It's the way it works. How does this work? I gotta figure it out. And Gordy said something in the chat. Would you say that the Tao is a feminine energy? And yes, we would. We actually talked about that a little bit on the introductory episode of all this, when we read the introductions to most of these anyway. And I do feel like it is a lot of feminine energy, darkness within darkness. It's the dark side of the yin and the yang. It doesn't mean it's like good versus evil, although you could look at it that way. But this interpretation of that yin yang symbol that I put on my forehead in the channel art, the darkness is what the light comes out of, I guess you could say, right? It's where everything's born. It's the void, which is also could be represented by a cup or by a woman, because that's where, she has her void where children come out of. To not be too, we won't be too vulgar on this show, but it's the same kind of thing. So yeah, 100% Gordy. Thank you for checking this out, and thank you for sticking around, man. And Joe from Joker says, dude, you are tall. You were going to get picked on by the drills. Yeah, totally. The drill instructors. I was able, though, to fall to the back a little bit, and they kind of didn't pick on me so much. So maybe they just saw that I figured out and they left me alone.
Yeah, your energy, like once you figured that out, they probably sensed that you figured it out.
And it's the same way when people talk about like negative entities and demons and all this stuff. And it's like, if you don't have a fear of it, or you're not in some way asking for it to come, it doesn't come in. Just like you have to invite a vampire in, you have to invite them across the threshold, the evil, right? It's not going to come into your house in that way unless you invite it. So yeah, 100%.
I didn't know what Gordy Two Shoes was talking about. Jazz hands.
Oh, from earlier, yeah.
Was it because I sang something? I don't know.
Maybe. What were we saying before that? Glad I'm here too. I don't know. Steven said deep, though. Thank you, Steven. We are Steven the Jupiterian.
Yeah. He seems like a new one to the chat. So welcome, Steven.
Boys go to Jupiter to get more stupider.
So we have we're probably about an hour and a half in. So think we should call it, or should we try to hit one more voice? Think it'll be long if we do one
Yeah,
more?
I think we could wrap it up here because I don't want to get into too much, because you never know. And I like doing the 2x2 so far. It sounds great. It's like Noah, 2x2, baby. Get on this ship. The Dow is getting on the oversharing ship 2x2.
Gordy said Dow the musical. I think that's what he was.
Oh, yeah, there
jazz
you go.
hands.
Yeah, I love it. Those who know don't talk, and those who talk don't know. Do 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 do.
You're creative.
Those who know don't talk. Those who talk don't know. Bah, 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 bah. Yeah, thank you guys for hanging out with us, man. This is such a great time. I love talking about the Dow. I mean,
yeah, it's been really neat to dive into this.
Yeah, and this really kind of highlights why we like talking about it, because there's so many ways it can be interpreted, and we're actually interpreting things live. I mean, I listened to this a million times, but now looking at different versions, it seems like I'm really starting to get a better grasp or understanding about this. And I also like how we cracked the code a little bit of how, this isn't stuff to be worshipped, so I don't even, it's funny because if there was a Lao Tzu and you said, hey, there's a group of Taoists, he'd be like, what? Like, you have a Taoist religion? What?
Yeah, exactly.
No offense to
he would start with the name. The name cannot be named.
Yeah. Wait, you're calling yourself a Taoist? What's going on here?
The Tao that is, what is it? How does it start?
The Tao that could be named is not the eternal name, or the name that could be named is not the eternal name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. There you go.
Exactly. And I really feel like that is just because you can't tell somebody else how to do this. They have to interpret it for themselves, right? And we're stuck right now in an age and a time where a lot of people are looking to external sources for their validation, and they want the way. They want someone to tell them the way. And then, once you find that out, that you got to do it for yourself, it could be hard because you don't want to do it. It's just like the hero. I was saying this in the beginning of the podcast, the hero's journey. There comes a point in all those stories where they don't think they're good enough for it. And if you don't think you're good enough for it, you're going to take yourself down, and anything else that you're building or anyone else that you're helping along with you, they're going to go down too. So.
And to what you were saying, like that hero's journey, it's your journey. Like, you can try to take your possessions, you can try to take other people on that journey, but in the end, it really boils down to you. It's your journey.
Yeah.
Are you doing it to gain those possessions? Are you doing it to please those people? You shouldn't.
And it doesn't mean that you have to do this as a solo journey. You just watch the Oversharing show and you'll be fine. No, you just go along and you see that everybody is really on their own path. Everybody is doing the Tao, whether they know it or not, right? Everybody is along the way. And if you could find people that are like-minded, that's great. You could start a group and you have like a support group and all this stuff. But as long as you remember, I would say, would be my advice if I was to give any, is just to remember that it is a solo journey. And inwardly anyway, in the physical, you could take a mate, you can get married, you could find somebody that you love, but again, you can't fix them or do anything for them. They have to be in harmony. Think of a band, the drummer isn't trying to tell the guitarist how to do his thing, they're all just performing together. It's like a solo, everything's like a solo performance. You have like a bass player, a guitar player, a drummer, a singer, someone on the tambourine, like a keyboardist, a DJ, whatever you have back there. They're all doing their thing in harmony, but no one's telling the other one how to do their thing, right?
Well, some people do try.
Yeah, some people do try, but what I mean.
The Tao, the path of the fool is the Tao of the fool.
Oh yeah. Look at Sharon.
Well, I was just thinking about the hero's journey, and then I thought about the fool on his journey.
I like that. It's so true. And maybe we could bring up the full card really quick before
And
we get
maybe
out of
we
here.
could, maybe somebody could make a Tao version of the tarot.
Oh, I wonder if that exists.
Yeah, I know. Me too. I just
Hmm.
thought of it right now.
Let's bring up a Rider Waite version because that seems to be the most standard version that we all follow. Right here we go. Let me see if I can just, yeah, there we go. That's better. Okay, I want to share this. So here we go. So you have the mountains in the background. So it's like this guy who just kind of has his head up and he's going along with a plan, and he's like, well, if I got to walk off the edge of this cliff, I guess that's the Tao. No. But he's got, the sun on his back, his face is up, he's got the dog there for the warning. Those awesome yellow boots, so he's like courageous, just moving forward. His tattered, lovely clothes. So what else could you say? He has the wand in his hand with a bag tied to it with all his possessions. So he's just with a feather on his head, he's lightly going throughout life. So yeah, I think this card kind of does embody the Tao just by itself. You get the two O's, which are like the two zeros, and the Fool, they're O's, but you think of the Tao. And then at the top of the card, you got the zero. It's the same kind of thing. With all that stuff. So
I was just looking and I found the Tao Oracle, an illuminated new approach to the I Ching. It's a Tao deck, an oracle deck. I sent you the link. Interesting.
Here, I'll put this on. Go to this. The Tao Oracle. Oh, that's beautiful.
Click on it. Oh, I mean, you could
Or scroll down.
yeah. So there it is, and you can click on Amazon if you want to buy it. It looks cool.
Same thing. All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Purchase on Amazon. All right. Well, now that we did our Tao commercial for this. Well, everybody, if you want to, since we're doing commercials, if you'd like to support the Over Sharon show, go to morelawsmoreproblems.com. There's plenty of ways to support us. Venmo, Zelle, you can mail me money, Cash App. But the best way to support us is just be here on Thursdays, hang out in the chat, like, subscribe, share. If you have any questions, let us know. Any insights, like thank you again to Spoons, who made that awesome insight about the name. Who cares what it's called, right? It's just it's the thing.
The thing.
Yeah, so that's what you can do. Go to morelawsmoreproblems.com and to get more of your Over Sharon needs, click on the Over Sharon tab and you can find us all different ways there in any pod source that you listen to. And go back and check out some of our old episodes, because even though this is episode number 73, we're 2 episodes away from doing 100 episodes. Because in the beginning, if you're kind of new here, I numbered every of the original.
Not every, but a lot of them.
Like 1 and 1.1 and 3.3 and 13.13 and all that. So we pretty much stay strong with our message, but there's a lot of cool stuff we talked about. One episode is episode 13 we talk about a lot, or 13.13. Go listen to that, because Sharon talks about, and I talk about, both our experiences with death and the different things, the different people we've known that have died. So it's pretty cool, and you can get an insight to our lives too, better idea of what's going on with us. Yeah. All right, Sharon, is there anything else you'd like to speak on this episode?
No, I think that's it.
All right, well, let's see. I guess one last time, shout out to the chat. Is there anything in there we didn't answer? Better to be known by dozens of good people than by thousands of assholes. I like that. It is better to be known by dozens of good people. Yes, by its argument, it's better to be known by dozens of people than thousands of assholes. That's hilarious.
What is it that drove Joe nuts? It drove me and I think Sharon nuts. What did you just say? What were you talking about?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember.
What are you talking about, Joe? Drove us nuts.
Well, he did say that you should do it. The Tao Tarot by Brandon.
Maybe it will drive him nuts. No, I like that.
Because the one I found is an oracle deck, not a tarot deck. So you
Yeah,
could still
the
do
Tao
it.
of Dune.
Oh, the
'Cause-
Dune. Oh, the Tao of the Dune.
Well, it'd be funny to do it in that context. I'm sure you could, but that reminds me of something I was going to mention earlier too, which was that
Oh, the number episode drove him nuts. Oh yeah, it drove
the
me nuts
numbering.
too.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you have to be a little eccentric and crazy. But I was
Yeah.
going to bring up, there's this poker book that I read when I was into reading poker books. It was called The Tao of Poker. Very interesting book. But I was thinking about that. You can kind of write a Tao of what was I going to say? I don't know. Maybe I'll think about it next week, everybody. But you can make another book and call it The Tao of something. I don't know. Yeah, well, I guess you're gonna have to tune in next week, everybody,
Yeah.
if I remember. But if not, what are you gonna do? Comment below if you have an idea about that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you guys again so much for hanging out in the chat. We had such a great time, and I'm glad we're doing these earlier now because we're getting better people, more quality people. Not better. That's the wrong thing to say. I'll just say because Joe's here. Joe's, it's great.
Yeah,
that we do
because it's great that Joe can join.
Yeah. But everybody else.
And we just get her done early, and then we can, have
Yeah.
dinner with friends or something like that some days.
Yeah, we have the
some
rest of the
Thursdays.
night. Exactly. All right. Well, what do we say to the good people, Sharon?
That once you start oversharing,
Then you totally stop being a Karen.
that's right.
All right, guys. We'll see you
So
next week.
Sharon.
Share on later. And we are